Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you share and, well, we extract the key knowledge and insights for you.
And today, we're diving into something pretty unique in higher education, St. John's College.
Yeah, sparked by an article looking at its very traditional approach, but we've
Yeah.
also got their curriculum info, some online chat, and even a study from Korea looking at their methods.
hmm So our mission today is really to grasp the core of St. John's College's great books idea. What makes it different? What are its strengths, today? And how do people actually see it?
Exactly. We've got that bestcolleges.com piece. St. John's College clings to a radical tradition.
Right.
Bits from their actual reading list, a note on how liberal arts links to law there, that Reddit thread, thoughts on St. John's College Annapolis, which was quite lively,
Oh, yeah.
and this fascinating paper from the Korean Journal of General Education, Ormomarshoin. It's studied using the St. John's seminar style in Korea.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting mix. The title translates to something like Development and Effectiveness Verification of Liberal Arts Seminar Classes,
Ooh.
applying the seminar model of St. John's College.
Quite a mouthful, but interesting. Okay, so let's start right at the core. What is the St. John's academic experience actually like?
Well, the absolute foundation is the program. It's this
Yeah.
four-year curriculum. Everyone does it, and it's built around the great books of Western Civ.
Everyone the same path, no majors.
No traditional majors, no. Everyone follows this track. One source called it a brainiac boot camp.
Huh, okay.
And that shared experience reading the same foundational texts really acts as a, quote, binding agent for the community.
A brainiac boot camp.
So it's intense, immersive, sounds like a training ground for the mind. And their teaching, it seems different too. I saw some odd words for teachers and classes.
Yeah, definitely. They don't say professors, they say tutors.
Tutors, okay. And their job isn't really to lecture, it's to guide the discussion. Now, they do have guest lectures sometimes, but even those tend to turn into conversations pretty quickly.
Interesting.
And the classes are called seminars, often with two tutors leading tutorials
Yeah.
for things like math, languages, French, ancient Greek, and music.
So very hands-on, lots of back and forth.
Exactly. And then juniors and seniors can do preceptorials, which are like deeper dives into one author or topic. Oh, and a really key thing is the Don Rag.
Dawnring? What's that?
It's a one-on-one meeting. A student and a tutor just talking about how things are going academically, any concerns, that sort of thing.
Huh. So constant interaction, constant engagement with the material and with the tutors. The article even quoted St. John's suggesting they might be like the most intellectual college in the country.
They definitely lean into that identity, attracting students who, genuinely love books, love ideas, and want to be around others like that.
But immersing yourself in all those old books, I mean, that must bring up some tricky stuff, right?
Mm.
Outdated views.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point the article raised. Students will encounter, quote, antiquated societal views, racism, sexism, all kinds of prejudice baked into some texts.
So how do they handle that? Do they, like, skip those parts?
No, not at all. The approach seems to be the opposite. Don't censor. Meet it head on through discussion.
Okay.
And those Don Rags, those one-on-one talks, are apparently a key place where students can talk through feeling uncomfortable with the material.
Privately, with a tutor. Makes sense.
Yeah. There's a quote about students trying to stay engaged, but also, respecting their own boundaries in those conversations. It sounds like a real balancing act.
It does. Does anyone criticize that approach? Like maybe it's not enough or students aren't equipped?
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
The sources we have don't really detail specific criticisms of how they handle it, but yeah, you'd imagine it relies heavily on the tutors being skilled facilitators.
Right. And the students being willing to engage thoughtfully, even with difficult stuff. Okay, but here's something that really jumped out at me. Despite being so theoretical, not focused on jobs,
Yeah.
the grads seem to do really well afterwards.
That really stands out, doesn't it? The article points out they rank incredibly high, 15th nationally, for the percentage of grads going to top law schools.
Wow, 15th.
And they're strong in PhD prep too. Top 2% for humanities doctorates, top 4% for science and engineering.
Okay, wait. Top 4% for science and engineering. But don't they famously not have big modern labs? How does that work?
Yeah, that seems like a contradiction, right?
Totally.
But if you look closer, math and the theory of science make up about half the curriculum.
Half, okay.
So they get this really strong theoretical grounding. And then for practical experience, the college actually funds summer research for students at other universities or labs.
Ah, okay. So they get the hands-on stuff elsewhere, but the deep thinking happens at St. John's.
Seems to be the idea.
Yeah.
And it's not just academia. Grads go into education, government, media, often after doing internships. It suggests that core skill set, thinking critically, communicating well, is pretty transferable.
So that intense textual analysis probably sharpens analytical skills for law or research,
hmm
and all that discussion must make them good at arguing or presenting ideas?
I think that's a really good way to put it. Those skills, dissecting texts, building arguments, debating cases, they're valuable almost anywhere.
So it works, but
Yeah.
how do they keep it going? It's small, endowment isn't huge compared to some places. Is it sustainable?
Well, the article described their operation as lean and mean.
Okay.
They focus their money on the core education, right?
Yeah.
They don't have massive sports programs or sprawling infrastructure like some universities.
Yeah.
Their survival kind of depends on attracting that specific student who wants this experience.
Makes sense. Focus on the niche.
And interestingly, they just raised a lot of money, $325 million.
Wow. Building new science labs.
Actually, no. They're using it mainly to lower tuition and offer more scholarships.
Really? Not expanding programs?
Not really. Maybe some small growth in their graduate institute or partnerships, but they're apparently quite firm about not adding, say, job training certificate programs. They'll collaborate with places that do, but it won't be part of St. John's itself.
That's sticking to your guns. Wow. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. That Reddit thread, you said it was lively. What kind of outside opinions did you see there?
Oh, it was all over the place.
Yeah.
Really unfiltered takes from Maryland locals and others.
Good stuff or bad stuff?
Both.
Huh.
On the plus side, people describe grads as, like, way above average at grasping new ideas, very well-spoken, good thinkers, bright, interesting. Some alums chimed in saying they really found their tribe there.
Nice. Sounds like the internal view.
Yeah, but then you had the skeptics.
Let me guess. Useless for a career.
Yep, that came up. Though, like we said, others push back with examples, especially in law.
Right.
There was also the idea it's maybe just for rich kids who don't need to worry about jobs.
But people mentioned scholarships and Pell Grants, too.
They did.
Yeah.
So that view was challenged. Other criticisms, weird, pretentious, too small, socially maybe, and expensive.
Weird. Seems common for unique places.
Definitely. And what was funny is how many Marylanders on the thread were like, I've literally never heard of this college.
In their own state. That's wild.
Yeah.
Any other, quirky comments?
Oh, yeah. Someone compared their reality week, where I guess they engage with modern stuff after being deep in the books, to Amish Rumspringa.
Huh. Okay, that's pretty good.
And there was this anecdote about a high school counselor telling someone not to apply because, get this, the students supposedly didn't own TVs back then. Like, that was the deciding factor.
Wow. Times have changed. Maybe.
Maybe. But amid all that, you still had people strongly making the point that St. John's teaches thinking, and that skill applies anywhere. Great prep for grad school, law, MBAs.
And the affordability efforts got mentioned, too.
Yes, the push for more scholarships came up positively. And people shared examples of STEM success stories, too. Someone involved in an AI company Microsoft bought, a NASA astrophysicist, to counter the purely humanities stereotype.
So pushing back against the useless idea.
Right. And one comment painted this picture of students, like, quoting Aristotle around town while working through the nature of being itself. Really intense intellectual vibe.
Beep. But I bet that intensity leads to other labels, too, like cult.
Yep. The cult comparison was definitely in there. Probably because it is so different, so focused.
Understandable, even if unfair.
And some interns apparently had mixed feelings about how useful the degree was outside of law school. There's also a mention that maybe the graduation rate isn't super high because some students realize halfway through it's just not for them.
That makes sense. It sounds demanding.
But even the people with criticisms usually admitted the students they met were incredibly smart and knew a lot. Oh, and someone who actually went there corrected the idea that students teach the class. They clarified it's collaborative discussion, not students acting like professors.
Good clarification. So the Reddit takeaway is, it's amazing for some, maybe confusing or impractical for others.
Pretty much. Great if you love ideas, philosophy, aren't set on one career yet. Maybe less ideal if you have a very specific job in mind or want STEM without that deep theoretical dive.
Okay, fascinating range. Now, that Korean study, applying this model elsewhere, what were they trying to find out?
They basically wanted to see if the St. John's seminar model could work effectively in a Korean university, Incheon National University. They set up these great book seminars, small groups, 2 instructors facilitating, discussing excerpts from classics.
And did it work in that different context?
The results were pretty striking. First semester students got significantly better at discussion, both individually and in groups, also better at self-directed learning, and felt more connected to the university.
Wow. Okay.
Second semester students showed big jumps in critical thinking skills and, again, self-directed learning.
So measurable improvements.
Yeah, and the students themselves backed this up in interviews. They talked about learning to listen better, express ideas clearly, see different perspectives, and becoming more proactive learners. They really liked the discussion format compared to just listening to lectures.
That's really strong validation for the method itself, isn't it? Beyond just St. John's.
It really seems to be. The researchers concluded it fosters those 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, plus other soft skills.
Did they have to change it much for Korea?
They made some adaptations, used shorter excerpts, maybe 15, 30 pages, and sometimes they balanced Western classics with Eastern texts, which makes sense.
Right.
And the instructors really focused on being facilitators, asking questions, guiding, not lecturing, moving from that professor-student thing to more of a facilitator-discussant relationship.
Sounds like they kept the spirit alive. Did they mention any difficulties in trying to scale this up, maybe?
They did. The biggest things were needing small class sizes, which
Yeah.
can be tough in big universities.
Sure.
Also, training instructors properly in this specific seminar method.
Right.
It's not just letting people talk
Right. It's a skill.
and getting students used to it,
Mm.
if they mostly come from lecture backgrounds. Plus, carefully choosing texts, balancing difficulty, length, maybe mixing classic and contemporary, especially for beginners.
All practical challenges. Okay, so let's try and weave all these threads together. St. John's, Reddit, the Korean study. Yeah. What are the big takeaways here?
Well, synthesizing it all, St. John's clearly offers this incredibly unique, very rigorous liberal arts path. It's all about the great books, discussions, seminars. The core strengths really seem to be developing critical thinking, communication, and just the ability to wrestle with really big, complex ideas.
Yeah, that comes through strongly.
But perspectives on its value are all over the map, right? From total admiration for the intellectual depth.
To skepticism about jobs and accessibility.
Exactly. But then that Korean study throws in this compelling evidence that the method itself, the seminar model, has real positive impact on student development, even in a totally different culture.
So maybe the way they teach is as important as what they teach.
Could be. So, bottom line, it's definitely not for everyone. It's a radical alternative, intensely philosophical, but it fosters a really distinct kind of thinking and produces grads who, despite the non-vocational focus, seem to have strong foundational skills that work in a lot of different fields.
It is fascinating. For me, the real aha moments were just seeing that stark contrast, this old school approach surviving, even thriving, against modern trends, and the passion in those Reddit comments, both for and against.
Yeah.
And then seeing the method validated in Korea, that was unexpected. It really makes you think about what education is for. So maybe a final thought for you, listening. In this age where everyone's pushing specialization, job skills, what's the lasting value of this kind of broad, deep, discussion-based education? Is learning to think critically, talk meaningfully about foundational ideas, is that a radical tradition worth, reconsidering for ourselves? And maybe what great book might be waiting for your own deep dive?